right, welcome to today's episode of Tomorrow's Leader, where we dive deep on all things leader related to leading yourself and leading others. I'm John Laurito, your host. I am super excited about today's episode because I get to interview somebody on this show who I am just enamored by. I love his background. You will too. I've got with us soon to be retired Navy Captain J.J. Cummings, former commanding officer of the USS Gerald R. Ford, Navy fighter pilot. JJ, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. I'm glad to be here. I think it's my first time ever on an official podcast. This is inaugural for me.
Well, I love it, and I'm excited as can be, and I'm very, very happy to have you here. So many questions I want to ask you, and I'm sure things that the audience wants to hear about. So, let's start with your background, maybe your story, if you can kind of share with the audience. I mean, you've gotten to an incredibly high level in the Navy, and you've got all kinds of leaders that are listening that are very inspired by that. But I'd love to share with them your story. Where did it start and how did you get that high?
Yeah, great. Thanks for the opportunity. Started in 1986. I was looking at options as a freshman at Bates College up there in Lewiston, Maine for after graduation. And I did not want to go into the corporate world. Wanted to do something relevant, dangerous, and rewarding. And naval aviation popped up on my radar. So I enlisted in the Navy as a United States Navy hospital corpsman in the reserves. And from there, upon graduation, went to Aviation Officer Candidate School, got commissioned, flew Tomcats for 10 years, F-14 Tomcats, the big fighter, we call it. And then commanded a Navy fighter squadron of Super Hornets, and then was selected to go into the Navy nuclear power program, where for 2 years I trained to be basically a commanding officer for a nuclear powered aircraft carrier. Part of that track requires you to become the executive officer of an aircraft carrier, which is the number 2 officer in command. I then commanded a conventionally powered amphibious assault warship, the USS Anchorage, and then was selected back in 2017 to be the commanding officer, the 3rd commanding officer of the USS Gerald R. Ford, the Navy's most technically advanced vessel and the Navy's newest aircraft carrier based here in Norfolk, Virginia. So track from flying fighters all the way up through to driving big ships to where I am today and about to retire next week. So it's been a great ride, and I've learned a ton about myself and leadership in these last 32 years.
I'm sure you have. First of all, congratulations. Thank you for your service. And wow, what an accomplishment and amazing ascension up the ranks. And this is, I know, asking you, who is a humble guy, I'm going to ask you to be a little not braggadocious, but just, open and transparent. What is the percentage? I mean, that's got to be an incredibly small percentage of people that come through the Navy, rise that quickly and also that high up. I mean, in reality, what kind of statistics are we looking at?
Sure. There's 320,000 people in the United States Navy. I don't know how many officers there are. You have enlisted and officers, but they only select 5 or 6 a year of the entire Navy to go into this program. So, the entire Navy, 6 per year selected to go become nuclear power trained and go become XO and CO of an aircraft carrier. So it's pretty good numbers. And I tell you, very rewarding job with the immensity of the mission and the size of that vessel and just the amount of people you're leading and influencing. It was fantastic, and I loved every minute of it. There's a lot of work, but I loved every minute of it.
That's great. Well, I want to talk a lot about your experience, what you learned, what you have to share. But let me ask you, if you reflect back on that, why do you think it was that you were promoted and got the opportunities that you did and ultimately to be the commanding officer?
So there's a screen process to be selected to be the captain of an aircraft carrier. So you have to, along the way, like any job, good evaluations along the way. So I had good evaluations as a squadron commanding officer of a Super Hornet squadron. I did well in nuclear power training. I didn't fail, obviously. And then along the way, just was successful to keep myself competitive for aircraft carrier command. So good evaluations along the way and leading teams and getting the mission complete. And then from that, made myself competitive for selection and got picked up in 2017 to be the CEO, commanding officer of the Ford. So pretty great track, and was fortunate to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. And again, great experience to lead all those young men and women on that fine ship.
So where did your passion for leadership come from?
Great question. I just love the fact that in a leadership position like the captain of a ship, for example, or a commanding officer of a fighter squadron, strike fighter squadron, the ability to change people's lives. With one decision, you can influence, in the squadron, it's 200 people. On an aircraft carrier, it's upwards of 4,000, 5,000 people. So I love the fact that I can, in these roles, change people's lives and make their lives better. At least that's my goal. So my passion comes from the ability to influence and help make sailors better people, better sailors, and accomplish the mission sooner and quicker.
Mm-hmm. Was there a moment where you kind of had this aha and realization that you are really good at what you do? I mean, obviously, to get that high up doesn't come with a fair amount of confidence. I mean, where did that come from? Was there some trigger or moment where you're like, okay, I've definitely got potential here?
There were moments when the aha for me was, I think, I'm XO in an aircraft carrier, and I think I was trying to be somebody who I was not. I look back, should I be a hard edge individual? Should I be a yeller? Should I be super stern? Should I not, should I just be not having make hammering people all the time? And then my aha moment was, you know what? I can't do that. I'm going to be who I am, which is a very personable, walking around and engaging with sailors individual. And that's what I just did for the last 8 or 9 years. I'm not going to be somebody who I'm not. I want to be who I am to my core, which is a down-to-earth, personable, enthusiastic leader who likes to engage with sailors, engage with admirals, engage with whoever need to accomplish the mission and make sure they understand that I really, truly care about them. So that was my aha moment. I'm not going to be somebody else. I'm going to be who I am.
That's great. And I think a lot of leaders struggle with that. I struggled with that. I remember early in my career just trying to be somebody I wasn't. I think most leaders kind of go through that period of time, and a lot never get out of it, to be very honest with you. Did you have a fear that, and maybe that's an ironic word to use, because I think a lot of leaders get caught up in the thought that if I'm myself and I'm this personable guy who's kind of, very, affiliative type of leader, the relationship person, that I'm not going to be respected, or I'm not going to have as much command over the organization that I'm leading. Did you feel that at any point, or were you concerned about that?
I had thought about that. Where am I being too informal? Obviously concerned, especially in the military where we have a rank structure, and the chain of command, the rank is very stern and strict, and that's why the Navy is what it is. But I had some concern, but I think what it comes down to, you can still hold a high standard in the military, in the Navy, meet that standard, and still be able to be personable as long as folks know you're being authentic. If they're seeing me be all, friendly and inauthentic with them as I walk around the ship, they'll see right through that. But if they know that I am truly genuine in my concern and my drive for mission success, then I think you can get away, not get away with it, but it can be successful in that personal relationship with young sailors and still get the mission done. So yes, concern early on, but I cannot be, I have to be personable and talk to folks. I couldn't change who I was. So definitely concerned, but work through it. Absolutely.
So, and was there a point when you were early on, let's say, or you were a fighter pilot? Were you still at that point? Did you know that, hey, at some point my goal is to be the commanding officer of a large aircraft carrier? Was that in your mind early on?
When I first came in, no, I just wanted to fly and keep flying and fighting. And then obviously the value of mentorship. My commanding officer pulled me aside. My former commanding officer of my 3rd or 4th squadron, when I was coming through the ranks as a senior commander, he's like, hey, JJ, if you like leadership, then nuclear power is a path for you. And I'm like, I had never thought about that until that moment. Like, something, sir, you're right. I love to lead. And if you want to lead a lot of people, this nuclear power program is the path to do that. So yeah, I hadn't thought about when I first came in, but absolutely brought to my attention. And then from then on, I'm like, I want to do that because I want to influence and lead thousands of sailors and considerably the hardest job in the Navy. So that's what I got. So mentorship paid off for me years ago when I sat down with my commanding officer.
So there's a bunch of things I want to talk about, because you in talking with you and getting to know you, you really are a rare breed. And the more I've talked to you, I realize, okay, there's a lot in you that would show the signs when somebody got to know you that you've got that ability to lead that large of an organization. But that's tough. I mean, when you talk about, one of the biggest challenges I think leaders face is they figure out they love leadership. They learn how to lead a small team and maybe even a medium-sized team. But you went from like overnight leading 200 people to 3,000, 4,000, 5,000,
yes.
Which is unbelievably challenging. I mean, talk about that. How does that work? And what's that whole challenge? How do you deal with that?
No, as I think back in true Navy fashion, I got very little training on how to do that. So I, go through nuclear, they trained me nuclear power, but didn't really give me much along the way of, hey, here's how to lead 3,000 people. So it's kind of up to you to figure it out, talk to mentors. I talked to many of ship captains, many ship XOs, executive officers to figure out what worked for them. But upon showing up, it was kind of a little overwhelming to look at the size of the organization that I was leading as compared to the size of a squadron, almost 100%, if, like you mentioned, 200, almost 5,000. But what it came down to was keeping it simple and back to the basics. And the showing you care thing, that worked for me. So that one thing going from the scaling up had no impact on my style. It was show them you care. How do I do that? Getting on the ship's intercom and telling the crew, squashing rumors or being honest, walking around the ship, talking to sailors one at a time, like I did in a small squadron, did the same thing in a larger vessel, larger command, and the word gets out. Hey, the XO or the CO, he's walking around talking to people and listening. That's a big deal. So I think initially overwhelmed, but then quickly figured out that it's leadership. It's not the scale, the size, it's who you are as a leader and how you project yourself amongst your direct reports of 18 I had or so, or how you present yourself in front of the crew as you walk around the ship. So it was almost kind of an easy transition. I changed nothing, just the size of folks that I was talking to.
How important was that aspect, though, the leadership by walking around? How impactful do you think that was?
My great story in this is I started doing this when I was the executive officer on USS Nimitz back in 13 on deployment. So the officers eat in their own space and the enlisted eat down what's called the mess decks, think of a giant high school cafeteria that makes 20,000 meals a day. So I would get in line with my tray with all the junior sailors, get in line as a Navy captain, get my food, walk into the mess decks and plop down next to some sailors and say, hey, fellas, hey, ladies, hey, I'm here. I'm the XO. Let's talk. And I would get great feedback from them because I was actually taking the time out of my day to go eat lunch with them. And then early on, I said, hey, if you tell me one thing we're doing well today, and more importantly, one thing we're not doing well on our ship, I'll give you this little piece of paper that allows you to sleep in tomorrow. So folks, all of a sudden, it started flowing. And then after the first few weeks of me doing that, this leadership by walking around principle on the mess decks, where at first was awkward, by the time after 2 or 3 weeks, I'd walk into the mess decks with my tray and folks, hey, sir, come over here, grab a seat. Because they knew I was going to listen to them and make changes based on our conversation. So that LBWA leadership by walking around principle for me was huge in that, because I know the crew talked and they all heard I was doing that because they knew that I cared enough to eat lunch with them and listen. And more importantly, do something with that information, not just take it and throw it in the trash, physically do something with that. And they knew that I was doing that. And that was a big deal for me for establishing credibility amongst the junior sailors.
I was just going to add that last piece to it because, it's one thing to listen and that does show you care, but right. It does the opposite when you don't do anything with that. So you took that feedback, made changes, showed to them that their feedback was important and credible and enough for you to take action on it.
I guess you'd argue that maybe even worse to show up, pretend to listen and do nothing, and then not show up at all. I'd say that you're there and you look, sir, I talked to you for 5 minutes. You did nothing with the information. Right. What are you doing here? That's the loss of credibility instant. So yes, I agree. You got to do something with that. Yeah. And if I couldn't do something, they give me, hey, sir, you want to pull in early? I want to go home and see my family. I'll say, hey, great. Can't do that because we have a mission to do out here, but you know what? We'll get you back as soon as we can. So I'd be honest with them. Like if I couldn't do something, I would tell them why, give them some context and background, maybe make them a little bit less frustrated and angry. So it was a really good conversation.
Well, I love, what you did is you incented them to give you the feedback. I find, and you tell me if you found this too, that sometimes people they don't want to give you feedback, even though you ask. They don't really want to tell you. They don't know if you really want the real answer. Do you want me to tell you what you think you want to hear, what I think you want to hear? Do you find that?
Yes, and I'm thinking back to on the Ford, we had a department that had some cultural issues in it, and I take full responsibility for not seeing this sooner. But their leader was saying that, hey, if you got anything for me, I'm always here, come talk to me. But no one came to speak to him. So I wonder why that was. And I know why, because Ellie was saying he was listening, he wasn't listening. So it's important, to make sure that if you're going to do that, you gotta get some game and make sure that when you listen, you do something and show that feedback is occurring, and then you get credibility. But yeah, he was not, I'm always, sir, I told them to come see me, but they weren't to come see me. Well, why is that, you think? I don't know. So we had to work through that and how he developed a toxic culture in that department, which we had to address.
Well, it's interesting because, there is something to be said. I see a lot of leaders, and candidly, I was one of these leaders for a period of time. I get caught in my office, my physical office. And I remember, I always had an open door policy. I physically kept my door open. But even
Same.
that people don't come in. They're intimidated. They don't want to bother you. I used to keep a big jar of candy
I see that.
out so that I'd be like trying to lure people in. But that doesn't even do it. And to your point, it's like anytime I went out and was all, walking around and talking to people, you really truly get people in real moments. They're disarmed. They feel you're much more approachable, less intimidating on their turf, so to speak, than if they come into your office. I mean, that's hard and intimidating. You get much more real conversations, right? Better information, everything.
Yeah, I think if you establish the credibility through over time, then the information flows. Because I think, to your point, early on, folks weren't talking to me, but over time, when they saw that I was legitimately doing something with that gave them the credibility. So that, much like you, my office door was always open, and I had a couple folks pop in my office, which I thought was pretty courageous. Some young junior sailor walks into the commanding officer of the aircraft carrier's office to raise an issue. Like, wow, that's powerful that they had the courage to do that, and also we established a culture that was acceptable. Now it can come to a fault that can occur. We can't have that jump the chain of command. I would ask them, hey, have you talked to your leadership first before we discussed, which they generally had. But I like the fact that folks had enough comfort and psychological safety to approach me and bring up an issue that I can hopefully address. I think it's a culture that you establish is what allows you to have those open conversations and get that feedback that may be hard to get at first.
Yeah. So one of the other big challenges I know leaders have is communication. Some organizations are great at it, some suck at it, some it's not a priority, some it is. Share a little bit about your perspective on it, what your goal was, and how you communicated and got the communication in your organization going.
Blunt, brutal, transparent honesty was my communication style. On the aircraft carrier, we had this ability to pick up a microphone and speak at one time to 5,000 people. So I would use that to address issues that I heard walking the mess decks. Hey, I heard, sir, we're pulling back in early. I heard this, I heard that, and heard we're staying out for 2 more weeks. So I'd hear that night on the one MC, the one main circuit. I'd get on there and say, hey, I heard this murmur on the mess deck today. That's not true. We're pulling in as scheduled, and this is what we're doing the next few days. So that brutal transparency was great, and I think they appreciated that. And my going line was always, look, what I know. I had kept no secrets. So the crew, when they heard me in the 1MC speaking that little speaker that's throughout the entire ship, they knew I was giving them the truth, the honest truth, and there was nothing that I was hiding. So that really gave me, again, credibility. When I spoke, they knew that I was giving them the straight skinny and not just some fluff or things that they wanted to hear. So my communication style was right out there, owning it. And if we made mistakes, I would own that mistake on the 1MC, which is tough to do, to get on the 1MC and talk to 5,000 people and tell them how you made a mistake. But I also did that to show them that I was honest in my assessment, and they're always going to get the straight truth from me.
So, I admired that a lot. I think about, wow, the power of that, being able to, pick up a microphone, communicate everything immediately, directly from you. Because I think in the absence of that, there's a lot of organizations that let things trickle out, or they just don't have a really good communication plan. And because of that, it misses certain people or departments or ultimately an entire organization. And then they wonder why things are not happening the right way. When in reality, you control the narrative, because if you're not, then people are coming up with things in their head and as to why decisions were made or what's happening or what the vision of the organization is. And usually that's wrong. So your style was abrupt, candid, clear, transparent. There was no concern about hidden agenda, which I'm sure bred a lot of not only credibility, but trust.
Yes.
What about the leaders that don't have that, though? They don't have a microphone where they can immediately communicate everything to the whole organization. What should that look like? What are your thoughts?
That's a challenge that we talked about when we spoke last week. It's easy for the commanding officer of an aircraft carrier to address issues, because I can jump on the 1MC and instantly shut a rumor down that may be starting to flourish, that I can put that to rest. How do you do that in the corporate world? I'm not sure. I'm still working through that as I transition from a military side to civilian side, but that's kind of a good bumper sticker. What's your 1MC? What is that? Is it Zoom calls? Is it emails? Is it more meetings now as we're coming through this COVID stuff. I know for me, in my last job, I was the chief of staff of a staff of about 200 people. I would use a weekly email to cover almost like my 1MC. What's going on this week? Here's what I'm hearing. So there was out there, folks knew it. So in this day and age with emails and obviously with Zoom calls and with the way that social media is taken off, certainly that's available. But it's challenging in the civilian world. On a ship, it's easy. So how do you convert that 1MC to speak to everybody to a now in a corporate office? How do I get that word out in a consistent and standard style? So that's a challenge, but I'm working through that, and I'll be curious in the coming years as I go into the corporate world to see what that's like. And I'll be thinking about that.
To your point, it's so critical that answer they have to come up with that answer. They've got to figure out, and maybe it's not an immediate everybody hears at the same point, but there's got to be a plan, because without a plan, then it's a slow trickle that never really quite gets around to everybody the way it should.
It's a great expression I picked up when I was at the war call. It's called Napoleon's corporal. Corporal is a low-ranking soldier, and his plans were based on if one of his corporals could understand it, then it was a good plan. So he'd find a young soldier, he would share his plan with him. Do you understand this, young man? Yep, that's the plan we're executing. So from Napoleon down to his most junior soldier, he knew the plan because Napoleon talked to his level. Same thing on the ship, or as I walk around squadron, I try to speak to the common denominator, which is that young 20 to 21-year-old young man or woman, young sailor. I would speak to them, so they had no doubt in their mind what was going on. Because I was not speaking to high-level strategic stuff. I was speaking to their level, and they instantly knew what we had to be done. So it was very clear. So that Napoleon's corporal concept is something I always would ask guys that work for me, or guys or gals, hey, go grab the most junior sailor on the passageway out there, pull him in there and tell him your plan. If he understands it, we'll execute. If not, we'll try again. So it's very fun to do that.
I love that. There's so much value in that. I'm just thinking about organizations and leaders that I'm working with, and how much value there is in that principle. I love it. One of the other things I've heard you talk about, which I think is really interesting, is, and I think if I quoted you right, you told me in one of our prior conversations, I love to abuse my power to make my people's life better, which I think was fantastic. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I like to catch folks off guard when I'm talking or mentoring junior officers. I go, yeah, I abuse my power all the time. And I pause for a second. They're like, what? And I finish with, to help out people that work for me. Yeah, so I've used power regularly. And I think you should. That's what makes their lives better. That's how you show them you care. By taking your rank, at least in the military, and using that to get things done, remove obstacles. So I would tell the folk, my direct reports, hey, work it at your level. Get to the point where you're smashing your head against the wall. Stop doing that. Come to my office. Let me know what the issue is. Give me what you worked through. And then let me bust out what I call the ship captain sledgehammer and remove obstacles for you to allow you to do your job. So that was very hot. So I want folks to work their issues, and then they hit a wall, come find me, and I'll remove that wall by abusing my power. Because when a ship captain picks the phone up in the Navy, stuff happens. Yeah. And I do that regularly when folks will come to me. By the way, I used to be don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. I stopped saying that 8 years ago because folks are waiting for the solution. They may never come to you. So I said, bring me your problems. That's okay. We'll work through it. We'll figure it out and see if we can find a way to help you get your job done and get the mission accomplished. So.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because I do hear that. I've said that before. Hey, bring a solution with a problem. But your point is that sometimes people won't have solutions, so you won't hear the problem to begin with.
They're going to wait.
Problem will fester.
They want to go in there without. Yeah, they'll go. I don't have solutions. I can't go see the captain yet. And I've seen that. I got burned by that on Ford. A thing festered for 8 months, waiting for a solution until it blew up in a department, a cultural issue. And if we had just taken that concept of let's just work through the problem, not wait for a solution, we would have solved it sooner. So
wow,
that was my lesson.
Fascinating. Yep. So that was an example. They just didn't have a solution. That was the reason why they didn't bring it to you, is because they didn't have a solution.
They have a solution. Yeah, they were waiting for the big Navy to fix their problem by having someone arrive to help the department out, and we waited for that solution and it never came. And then cultural blow up, which we had to deal with, and turns out we fixed it in-house, meaning we took someone from our own ship, assigned them to that department, and made the department better. So I was mad at myself because we should have seen that 8 months ago, but we waited for that solution that never came. Yeah. And as a result, sailors in that department suffered. And it bothers me still to this day. That was 2 years ago.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah. Very great learning. Let me ask you a tough question, and this is something that I'm really interested to hear your answer on. Leaders, it's one thing to have a playbook, peacetime playbook, and okay, here's how I am as a leader, and here's how things will run, here's the processes and systems and chain of command, and then chaos hits or crisis hits, or in your case, you've got war and lives are on the line. I mean, what does leadership need to look like in times like that, with high levels of intensity, emotion, crises? What does that look like?
So in times of crisis or emergency is not the time to try to do something different, something out of the book, unless it really requires that. So as I think about that, in time of war, we descend to the level of our training. So if we are well trained, when it starts to break down, we go to our training, and that's what carries us through to the mission completion. So, we've been there. I've flown early days of OEF over Afghanistan in 2001, and getting shot at and delivering live laser guided weapons in close proximity to special forces and individuals and SEALs on deck in Afghanistan. And that's very concerning and high stress. But you know what? It's just like dropping a bomb, a practice bomb over here at Navy Dare. It's the same principle, same procedure, same processes. So we slow down, kept it simple. Napoleon's corporal. We knew what we had to do, and all the distractions of the chaos did not affect us either flying or on the ship as we're working through the mission. Because every event we do for flying, we'll brief it so we know what the plan is. Every high risk event on the carrier, we'll brief that, we'll execute, and then more importantly, which I think corporate America needs to do more of, is the debrief. Afterwards, what do we learn from this event? What did we say we were going to do? What happened, and why did we diverge from our original plan? And how can we learn from that? So every debrief, either flying or on the ship event, I took it very seriously. That's where you get your most learning from. It's not during the event itself, it's afterwards. So that when it is chaos or war or conflict, you've learned your lessons. And when it starts to break down, you go out of the basics and you can still get the mission accomplished.
Yeah. It's amazing. And you're absolutely right. The debrief is not nearly used enough. And that's such a critical part of leadership and just getting better. But go back to you flying over Afghanistan in 2001 and getting shot at. I mean, I can't even imagine the level of intensity and fear and anxiety that you're going through at that point. I mean, what's happening? What's going through your mind, and how do you keep focused on what you're doing? And in that case, you're also leading other people. I mean, how do you do that?
That flight to this day is etched in my memory forever. My first flight over Afghanistan, I was in Fighter Squadron 102, mid-October 2001. Night launch, tank over at Pakistan, hit a tanker over Afghanistan. Everyone lights out, and just that game day feeling like this is it. For 7 years, I've been training for this moment. Let's go get some. And then coming up in the vicinity of Kandahar and delivering 4 laser guided weapons. Just we got shot at. AAA came up, in our area. But again, just sticking to the procedure, the process, and it was really like just we had done for 7 years of training came to fruition that first night in Afghanistan. Pretty amazing. And I remember thinking that when I came back, that was just like a normal hop or flight back at Airwing Fallon or in North Carolina. That just now was the real deal. If I get shot down, it was not going to be good for me or my family. Folks on deck wanted me to not be there, so that was definitely a wake-up call. But coming back for that 6-7 hour hop, landing aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt, looking up and seeing the American flag flying from the halyard was the same flag that was at the World Trade Center. They'd flown out to the ship, and I remember thinking it was a 6 a.m. recovery when I landed. I got kind of choked up, like I knew why I was doing what I was doing because of what I just did. It wasn't about me. It was now about our nation and our principles and our way of life. And that's why I just came back to the mission. Like, I get it. I'm here, not for me. I'm here for our country, for the United States of America, for our Navy. So pretty big moment for that time frame. I think back about that moment a lot because it's a really special moment in my life. 7 years of training, come out and do that, and to come back and see that flag flying there on the halyard of the USS Theodore Roosevelt was a special moment in my life.
That's amazing. I've got chills, honestly. And
I'm getting chills too.
It's unbelievable. I mean, it's got to be such a rush of emotion when that. And I don't know, did it not hit you until that moment you landed and you looked? I mean, or was it when you completed the mission and you're now realizing, okay, I think we're okay now?
You're so in the game and so compartmentalized. You don't think about anything else. Just the mission. Get the jet safely to the target. Deliver your weapons on parameters. Don't break a refueling probe off the tanker and divert to Uzbekistan. So you're focused on the mission. When you finally land aboard the carrier, they pull you over, tie you down, you shut down. It's finally like, wow. You take a step back to go, yeah, that was intense, and I can't believe that just happened. But wow, I'm so glad to be here, and we got many more months that's coming. I can't wait to get back to work.
Wow.
That was my feeling.
Is it like the scene in Top Gun where everybody comes rushing over and you're the hero?
I was like, no, that's not. That's
it should be.
There were no high fives on flight deck. There was just a sense of just intensity. That was great. We went and debriefed it, of course. What could we have done better? And then, all right, I was back out there 2 nights later, getting it done and learning from the previous flight. So, but there were no high fives or hugs with Iceman on the flight deck there. It's just get below deck and get back to work.
Wow. We got all the respect, my respect in the world. And I know everybody that's listening, I mean, just the level of appreciation and respect and admiration we have for you and everybody that has gone through what you have to fight for our country is unbelievable. And thank you.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, I'll pass your thanks on to my wife and family. They're the ones that really earn it. I mean, I'm off doing fun, dangerous things for our nation that I love to do. While Sarah's back here slugging it out with doctors, baseball tournaments, blowing up water heaters. I missed my first child's birth. I was underway for Mackenzie when she was born. So the appreciation I will transmit to Sarah, because she's the one that really earns it and allows me to stay in. So as does every military spouse that supports their husband or wife or loved one when they join the military and do things, dangerous things for our nation overseas.
100% agree. Absolutely. And please pass that on to them, of course.
I will.
That's a great segue into another question I have for you. You talk about the support system that a leader needs and needs to build, family, personal support, and also professional and building kind of your circle. How important do you think that is, and how deliberate do you need or should a leader be in terms of pulling the right people into his or her circle?
When I look back on my career, I didn't do that enough. We're all type A fighter pilots. I got this, and I would reach out occasionally for assistance when I had a problem I couldn't solve or I was having troubles with. But, I would get mentorship along the way, read a lot of books, actually talk to my wife a bunch. A lot of decisions I made for the ship, I bounced off her. I'm like, does this make sense to you? What do you think? And she's like, oh, that sounds good. Or I think she could do my job personally, because she is a good leader, if not better than I am. Because we've talked about this for 30 some odd years, and we'd bounce ideas around about a game plan for a policy for the ship. And it's like, no, you can't do that. You moron, do this. I'm like, oh, good call, Sarah. Thank you. But I think I did not reach out as much as I should have. That's what I share with new carrier COs. Hey, it's a team sport. Leadership's a team sport. Get out there and hit up your fellow commanding officers on the carriers and see what challenges they're experiencing. You may learn something. I did it a few times back in the 18, 19, 20 time frame. Got together a bunch of the carrier COs, and I learned a bunch. Wow, you guys have that problem? How'd you fix that? That's a great idea. I'm going to do that. So I wish I'd done more of that. And I think you get, to your point, you get so wrapped in your office and business of your own vessel, let's say, you don't take that time to go reach out and seek assistance. And I think I could have done a better job. That's one of my, not a regret, but something I could have done better with, was more mentorship from my peers and more mentorship from the folks that worked above me, the admirals and such.
Got it. Well, JJ, this has been phenomenal. I know we're out of time here, and I wish I could go on and on because I got so much more to ask you. So maybe we'll have you back on another time and do part 2 or 3 or whatnot.
Okay.
But if people want to learn more about you or get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I'm off social media, given my jobs the last few years to kind of steer clear of that. I am on LinkedIn. You can reach JJ Cummings. I'm there. That's pretty much it for me. I'm not on Facebook or Twitter or Pinterest or TikTok. I refer to my adult or my adolescent children for that. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and as I continue to find ways to serve our nation in a different form or fashion after I leave the Navy, I want to get more into what you're doing. I love this aspect of leadership, mentorship, training, and trying to make people's lives better. No longer on a ship now, I can do that hopefully in the civilian world and make folks better leaders, and we can all learn together and learn from our mistakes and make people more aggressive in their leadership style.
Well, I hope you and I get an opportunity to work together and do some great things together, and I think we will. So this is the start of it, and I greatly appreciate you joining us today. You've shared awesome. I'm benefited and better as a leader having listened to you. So I know you got so much great stuff to offer. So I appreciate you joining.
Thanks for your time and thanks for the opportunity, John. I really appreciate this. And again, my first podcast, and I'm glad we could do this. And I learned a bunch too. And I've listened to a lot of your podcasts. I really enjoy listening to you speak, and we have a lot of the same thoughts, a lot of parallel, themes that when you speak, I'm like, yeah, I've done that, or I agree with that. So it's been a pleasure to meet you and get introduced to your podcast. So it's been good for me as well.
Excellent. Terrific. Well, and thank you all for joining today. We've been here with Navy Captain J.J. Cummings, former commanding officer of the USS Gerald R. Ford, Navy fighter pilot with tons and tons of leadership experience and lessons to share. I know you've gotten a lot out of today's episode, so let us know. Share, like the episode, go down below, give a 5-star review, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.